When it comes to immigration and liberalism, there are three time periods that have existed: the 19th century, the early period, the two world wars, the middle period, the post-war period, the later period. In each country, these periods are slightly different. For example, in the United States, the middle period was 1925 to 1965, whereas for all other English-speaking countries, the later period began in 1947. But let's look at each period and its special nature. Liberalism believes in the autonomous individual, that people should be free from all restraint, and in the 19th century, when liberalism as we would recognise it first came into existence, the Industrial Revolution was spreading and encouraged bigger populations, and one of the big questions of the age was what to do with Europe's growing population. But there existed an answer: North America, and to a smaller extent, South America, Southern Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and for the French, Algeria. Together, these underpopulated areas of the world could absorb the excess peoples of Europe. While immigration had existed before this time, it wasn't a part of liberal ideology. After the Napoleonic Wars, liberalism came to support immigration, or more correctly, emigration. Here was a way to combine a number of different strands of liberalism together. People who emigrated were self-made men. They were leaving behind their family, their communities, their nations. They were men who could invent themselves in a new place. They were autonomous individuals. Immigration also had an economic base as well. It took people from places where labour was oversupplied and took it to places where labour was undersupplied. Liberalism was, and is, a middle-class philosophy that believes that business makes men free, because money is as welcome in China as it is in Southampton, but land cannot move, so it ties people down. Emigration destroys people's old connections, because hardly any of them would be able to return home. Emigration was a one-way trip. To that end, liberalism supported imperialism and colonialism, things you may have noticed modern liberalism says are wrong. By the time of the First World War, the amounts of people moving out of Europe were in the millions each year. The war would put a stop to most large-scale immigration, as it was simply too dangerous to travel. Attitudes also hardened as the war made people suspicious of foreigners, and the Russian Revolution fueled that suspicion. The war also made a big dent in the idea that economies always grew, another core belief of liberalism. These attitudes would continue throughout the interwar period and into the Second World War. But two things would have changed this situation. One was the Holocaust. The second was the massive amounts of refugees in post-war Europe. When the true extent of the Nazis' crimes against the Jews became known in the West, there was profound shock. Nazism made a mockery of the ideas of human progress, of liberalism. The world wanted answers. How could such a thing have happened, and how could it be stopped from happening again? Liberalism found the answers. There were three groups to blame: the Nazis, the entire German people, and the peoples of the Western democracies. But hadn't the people of the Western democracies fought Nazism? Hadn't they done a great deal to destroy Nazism? The answer to both was, of course, yes. So how could they be blamed for the Holocaust? They restricted immigration. The liberal argument went like this: if the democracies had allowed unrestricted immigration from Germany, then all of the Jews could have escaped and the Holocaust wouldn't have happened. It's not very good thinking, as in 1930 there were approximately 500,000 German Jews, but the Nazis killed approximately 6 million. The truth is that the majority of those killed no one seriously thought were in any danger. It would have seemed outlandish in 1939 to think that the Jews of Salonika in Greece or in Kiev in the Soviet Union were in any danger from the Nazis. But with liberalism, feelings are more important than facts, and many people were told they should feel guilty for failing to save people they never had a chance of saving. The war also left millions of people displaced, with no home or family to return to, in some countries with no country to return to, and with communism taking over Eastern Europe, many had nowhere to go. At first, the Allies thought that the problem would sort itself out, but by 1947 it was becoming obvious that this was not the case. Drastic measures would have to be taken to solve this international crisis. The solution was to allow these refugees to emigrate to countries that were largely untouched by the war. Every English-speaking country, with the exception of Ireland, and many South and Central American countries were convinced to take in large numbers of refugees. The scheme lasted for 5 years and solved a great deal of the problem. But for countries like Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand and South Africa, the scheme was the stepping stone to further long-term immigration schemes. Schemes that, while their names have changed, have never stopped. In time, every Western country would become part of these schemes. Today, and for many decades, the immigrants have not been from Europe, but from all around the world. The false idea that the peoples of the Western democracies helped kill Jews in the Holocaust now allows Muslims and Hindus, Buddhists and animists to enter the West because our prejudice killed the Jews, not the Nazis. Liberalism uses every dirty trick in its book to get what it wants. But the immigration that takes place today is a reversal of the immigration of the 19th century. Instead of exporting people, liberalism is now importing people, but much of the same ideas remain. Immigrants are people who leave their families, their communities, their countries. They are liberals, even if they don't know it. Every immigrant is an autonomous individual, able to remake themselves. They are not tied down by land, they are instead free because money means freedom. They are not loyal to their own country, and they are not loyal to their new country. They are true liberals. They are free, self-made men, free from loyalty, free from their traditions, free to create any future they like. Compared to an immigrant, what hope does the native-born have to offer liberalism?